Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. What an incredible episode we have ready for you guys. Lucky number 10, right? In soccer, we always want to be the number 10, so JC today gets that opportunity. Wow. Only the best players wear the number 10, so but what an incredible message Pastor shared with us on Sunday. I don't know if you guys received, but man, that message of the strong hand, and stretching your weak hand. And so today we get an opportunity to hear from a man who has two strong hands, but and use them to bring people to the Lord. And we're just really excited for you guys to hear, what an incredible blessing the testimony of JC has been to our church. Right, Oso?
Right. And, I want to bring in JC, and I want to take this opportunity to honor JC. And, we were having a great conversation in the car on the way over here. I just want to honor him. He's such an amazing man. The way he's a leader, the way his disciples look up to him, the way he's a husband, and just the way he is as an overall leader is really inspiring. And it's really pushed me also to be a better man of Christ and just be a better man overall. But I wanted to introduce JC, our guest today. Welcome, JC.
Thank you, guys. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Awesome, bro. And we've been trying to get you on for a while now. But, this is the JC we've been talking about, the one that Louis and Marcos brought up when they were on the podcast. This is the man right here, JC. This is the man that brought them. So it's going to be a very interesting, powerful podcast because he's the one that started it all. But, JC, tell us a little bit about yourself, brother, like who you are, what you're about.
Yeah, so I am 32 years old. I am the oldest of three siblings. I married my dream girl.
Hey, come on.
Or we're about to hit our 6 years of being married. Wow. It's crazy. Time flies when you're having fun. And I like long walks on the beach. No, I'm just playing. I've been serving God for about 10 years already.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey.
And how did you come to Christ? Like how? Like your you want to give us a little bit about your testimony,
sure.
How you came to Christ?
Yeah. So it's crazy. So it's crazy. It's going to be 10 years in December this year. So I gave my life to Christ in 2012.
Wow.
And the way that happened was my sister started going to church, and one day she had gone to an encounter, right? And she said, "Hey, you want to come to church? Like I'm gonna give my testimony," and I'm like, "Okay, sure, yeah, I'll go with you." She had asked me like on a Friday when on her way to encounter, and then I told her Sunday come to church. So I'm like, "Okay, cool." But that Sunday, I think, I used to be a huge football fan. The Chargers were playing on Sunday morning. So I told her, you know what, sis, like I can't make it today, but I'll make it up to you, So long story short, I felt really bad. I didn't go see her testimony. But the following Sunday, I showed up. I went to church. Didn't know what to expect because I've gone to church before, like growing up. My mom would take us. She would take us to our local Catholic church growing up. I did my first communion. I'm not sure if catechism is the same thing as that, but I did both. I did it at two different churches when we moved. Yeah. So I grew up like believing in God. I remember like I learned how to pray like early, like young. More than prayer was like the Persinas kind of so but a seed was planted from very young, So I mean, I'm like, oh, well, how bad can church be, or how? Because, sorry, I don't mean to ramble, but I grew up going to church, and there was a point in my life where my family stopped going. So obviously, like I stopped going, And it was a really young age. I would say about 11 or 12. I stopped going to church, and when my sister invited me, I was 21, 22.
Okay.
So it had been a while. I would go occasionally when I would come out in like a quinceañera or like occasions like that. I would go. So when she invited me, like, okay, well, it can't be. I've done it before, right? So I remember going to church, and it was definitely different. I stood in the back, but I just remember like receiving, or just the message was like, oh wow, like this is cool. I really like what this man is saying, it was different, definitely different for me. So yeah, that's how I came to church. But what kept me going for these 10 years, I kept going to church, here and there, not every Sunday. I would go by myself even sometimes. But they would talk about an event that was happening coming up. Oh, Encounter's coming up, and people will get so excited. I'm like, cool, you know, like I'm not going, but whatever that is, I'm not going to. But yeah, and then, you know, little by little, people started approaching me like, hey, like, you know, trying to be friendly with me, you know, and then I remember, you know, the Encounter. They kept bringing it up even more and more, and then the time came where like it was like 2 weeks away, you know, and then people asked me like, do you want to go to Encounter? And I stopped going to church for like before the Encounter, because I didn't want to be asked that question anymore.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to be asked. I'm like, people are pressuring me, like what's going on, you know? But I knew they wanted something good for me, you know? Anyway, so this is gonna sound silly, but it's the truth, you know. I don't know if you guys remember in 2012, there was there's an Aztec calendar, right? Like
Okay,
in Mexican, you probably know the Aztec calendar. Yeah. So there was like a big old, like, you know, social media. They started saying like the world's gonna end, you know, in 2012. I remember it was supposed to end December 22, 2012.
Yeah,
that was the day before my birthday. That's what I remember, you know. And Encounter was December 12th, you know, so it was 10 days before the world ended, you know. And, you know, I've never really been too superstitious, but I'm like, man, I don't know if this is true, but in case it is true, like, I want to be saved, you know, I want to go to heaven, you know. So, like, looking back, like, all these, you know, like, growing up, you know, like, that seed planted, I believed in God, you know. So, I'm like, I don't know if this is true, but I believe that there's a heaven, and I believe there's a God. So if the world does end, if the Aztecs got it right, then I want to go to heaven, you know.
Right.
So I went to this Encounter, man. Like I did it out of fear of not going to hell, you know. But that's what that weekend changed my life.
And how was your process like transitioning from the world to Christ?
Yeah. So. If I could be honest with you, like that was the only reason why I came to church, because of my sister. I felt bad, and the reason why I went to this Encounter was because I didn't want to go to hell. But my life to that point wasn't bad, you know. I would go out all the time. Every weekend there was something fun to do. I grew up. I was always really close to my friends.
That's good.
Coming home from work, like I would get out of work. I remember I used to work at a market. And I would get off at 10:30 p.m. on a school night, you know. And I would come out of work in my uniform, and all my friends were parked outside, you know, just waiting for me. Like, what are we doing, you know, on a school night, you know? Like, I don't know, dude. It's Wednesday, you know. Like, well, let's go to your house, you know. So that's the type of like friends that I had. I always wanted to be around. Like, we were always together. Even I remember my friend Eric he started working at Chevron right after high school, and he would do the graveyard shift. Yeah, so after like us going out, we would go to Chevron and just hang out outside just to keep them company, you know what I mean? Wow. So those are the type of friends that I had, you know. Luckily, you know, we were very close. We had a very strong bond. So, you know, so my process, you know, one thing that I hear often is, which is fine, you know, actually, you know, sometimes God allows things to happen for a reason, but a lot of people come to God when they're broken, when they hit rock bottom, you know, and maybe suffer a breakup, but they're just struggling, you know, with something. But for me, I had nothing that I would say like, God, like I want help, you know. So, you know, so for me, go to Encounter, like I'm like I don't really know what to expect. Like I said, I was just going for that reason. My process wasn't really like many people's who they were at a point of their lives where they said, I need God. I didn't think about that, right. You know. But at this Encounter, you know, one thing that I did that God opened my eyes, you know, I had friends, I had a cool job, you know, a cool job, right? I don't know, it's just everything was going well for me, you know, at that time, at least I thought that, you know. But at this Encounter, there was a specific talk, and I don't remember who was speaking, but the speaker said, you know, what's your purpose? Right? Wow. They start asking like, what's your purpose? And for the first time, I can tell you guys that I really asked myself, and I try to search within and say, what is my purpose? You know, I work, I get paid, I spend my money on the weekend.
Wow.
And then it's the same cycle, you know what I mean? Like there was no purpose for my life, you know. And then as like once that, I felt like something was, I don't know, something changed in my heart. Like, man, like, and then, you know, obviously it helped that the speaker would share the word of God. Like, there's a purpose for your life. You know, you were born, you know, for more than what you're doing, you know, and then I'm like, okay, like, that's when I remember that feeling like, okay, like my heart started opening, you know, because I was curious to what my purpose was, you know. And as that weekend kept going, you know, there was a talk on forgiveness, right?
Wow.
And like I said, I felt like I was good, so I'm like, God, who do I forgive? You know, like, I don't have any enemies, you know. I feel like I'm cool with everybody, like, happy-go-lucky guy, you know. And then I'm like, okay, well, and then they were saying, no, think about who hurt you, you know. And I'm like, okay, no one really hurt me. And I'm like, well, Mom, I'm sorry, you know, if you spanked me when we were young, you know, I guess, you know, I was trying to be open, you know. And then I said, Dad, I'm like, well, I don't even know my dad. How could I forgive someone I don't know?
Wow.
And then I like, God showed me something, you know, like, yeah, you that's what you think, but, you know, it's just crazy, you know, like my first like experience, like a supernatural experience ever. I had my eyes closed, I remember, and God showed me, like, every time they compare you to your dad, that you get angry. Like my uncles, like when I'll go to their house and then, oh, he walks like his dad or something like that. I'm like, and I would say, like, don't compare me to someone that, like, I don't know, you know. And then God showed me, you're getting defensive because there is something there. Like, you are hurt, you know what I mean?
Wow.
But at that area of my life, like, no one had ever touched that area of my life. You know what I mean? So then I said, God, like, I forgive my dad. Kind of like, is this really happening? But once I said that, I felt something just leave me. You know, I'm like, whoa, like this is real. You know, like I'm so glad I came. You know, and that, you know, those two things, you know, knowing what my purpose was, and I learned that, you know, when it tied into it because I'm like, people need to know what happened to me. You know, like like I said, I have so many friends. I'm like, I don't know what they're going through, but like I didn't know I was going through stuff, or I didn't know that I had things that like deep in my heart. I'm like, I'm sure other people do too, you know. Like I'm usually the happy one from the group. Imagine the angry ones, you know. So then I'm like, wow, like okay, like people need to know about this Jesus, you know.
And what do you like? How can you explain what Jesus has done in your life, but not just in your life, but with you internally, like in your heart? Like, how can you explain that?
I don't really like to. It's not that I don't like to. I guess it's hard for me to say it. That, you know, when God gives, like, it is really glory to God, you know. But like when people say I have gifts, you know, like I don't really like to say it. I accept God's gifts, but that's it, you know. But my wife constantly tells me, like, you have a gift. You can relate to people. Like, you have a gift. Like, people feel so comfortable around you. And I'm like, thanks, babe, but it's hard for me to receive it sometimes, you know. But looking back, it's true, you know. I can't deny the fact that I've always had people close to me, you know. People like wanted to be around me, you know. And like I said, I don't want to sound like, you know, boast or anything like that. But thinking back, there was always someone at my house. People always wanted to be at my house, you know. Like there was times where I'm like, I just want to be alone, but all these dudes are just always wanted to be with me, you know. Like, but then God showed me, like, your purpose is to share my love to these people. So to answer your question, what has Jesus done? He allowed me to discover my purpose, you know. And, you know, looking back, I realized, like, yeah, like he's always had a plan for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you want to ask something, or? But, you know, I've always wanted to have you on the podcast because I always knew there was something great in you. You know, I see it like I know there's stories about, you know, Stephen, remember before he was killed, how his face was shining, and also when Moses was coming down with the 10 Commandments, you know, his face was shining. You know, He'll place you on the rock if you ask to see him, you know, and if you're willing to go through it. But, you know, when we were talking about it in the car earlier when I met you, that's why I said I was intimidated by you, because when I first met you, like, I saw that shine, you know, I saw that light, and I'm like, wow, that's like, there was something about you. And, you know, I've always, like, and it's not that I avoided talking to you, but I always felt like, okay, I'm gonna talk to JC right now. Like, oh man, you know,
I was gonna beat you up. Huh?
You could, right? No, but I think having you on this podcast really is because, you know, like, our first objection of this podcast was to have, people share their testimony. When I first wanted to start the podcast, I wanted to have people who were broken and people who struggled. But I think you coming on here could really open the door for those who didn't have problems, who just because you were so radical, like, hey, I'm giving my life to you, God. And I think people watching right now, like, there's men right now who are at your age, 22. Because I know when I was 22, I became a correction officer, and I just thought about, drinking, using drugs, living my best life, YOLO. Yeah. God was never in my life. God was never I never thought about God. And, you being so young, you just gave it all for God. And I think those viewers watching who are young right now, just watching you speak, I think you could impact a lot of lives.
Thank you. And don't get me wrong, it was a process, going back, I enjoyed my life, it wasn't something that I wanted to give up because it was hurting me. No, it was pleasing me, But, when they, if you grew up, in the hood or something, or if you watch movies, you hear a lot of men saying, I'll die for my homies, or I got your back, bro, you know what I mean? And I remember specific on a service, and I shared this, in one time that I was able to share a word, pastor was saying imagine the people that you love the most here, I was in service, and at the time we had benches, right? And I was still sitting by myself. And then he said, close your eyes and I want you to imagine the people that you love the most. And right away you would think it would be my family, which I do love my family, right? But at that moment, I closed my eyes and I envisioned my friends, sitting there with me, And I remember I can't leave here and act a fool around them, because then they'll never come, So little did I know I would die for them, but it wasn't physically, it was dying to myself, not really denying what I wanted to do so that I could be a good example to them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because those friends that you hung around with, they're here now in our ministry. Majority of them, right? I believe. How was it? What was your overall goal for to bring them to Christ, or how did that come about?
And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just knew, like I said, I knew what my purpose was, and then I knew that God was going to be with me, And it's so crazy because one thing I love about God, and I think I was telling you on the way here, is He doesn't change who you are. He changes your purpose. He doesn't change your personality. People are afraid to come to God because, I don't want to change. He changes your heart, but He doesn't. He gave us all our personality. How boring would it be if we're all the same? You know what I mean? That's why I believe that in relationships, opposites attract. We balance each other out. But anyway, where I was going with this is, what was I saying? About my friends, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I'm I don't know how I'm gonna win them, but I know I have to. And this is what I was saying. I was sneaky in the world. I will get my way to get into places. I will sneak my way. I was a sneaky dude for the bad things. I'm well, what the enemy meant for evil, God will turn it to good, right? Amen. So I'm I'm gonna be sneaky and bring these guys to church. You know what I mean? So it started with Marcos. He was probably the easiest one because Marcos was,
Was he always that happy?
Yeah, he was, but he was mean happy, But with each other, I like to say that, nothing really phases me because I grew up clowning with Marcos. So there's nothing people could say to hurt me. Right. Not in a bad way though, but clowning, making fun of each other. I'm dude,
because you've been through it.
Yeah. If anything, I hurt them more. I'm just kidding, bro. But anyway, so Marcos was the first one. I remember, again, I didn't know how I was gonna do this, and how I was even gonna tell him that I was, now going to church, or even, just I didn't want to do the things that I was doing before. Excuse me. But yeah, Marcos was always in my house. He didn't even have to ask me, can I come over? He would just be there. He's hey, where you at? I'm I'm almost home. He's all right, cool, I'm here. Kind of thing. And then I remember one time it was Friday, And I'm like, okay, service is at 7:30. You know, how do I get rid of them so I can go to church? You know, and I'm like, hey, bro. Yeah, so I remember Marcos was at my house that one time, and it was a Friday. It was a Friday night. I knew we had service at 7:30, and I was thinking like, how do I get this guy to leave? You know, because I want to go to church. You know, but I know he's not gonna want to. You know, but at least I'm not really ready to like. I don't know how to even invite him. You know, and then he's like, well, hey, I'll meet you guys around 10, wherever we're doing, but I gotta do something. You know, he's like, well, where are you going? I'm like, oh, I'm going to church, bro. He goes, for real? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, I'll go with you. You know, it was that easy, you know. But I think because of that bond that we had, like, he trusted me. Yeah. For example, like, we will follow each other to places where, like, dude, we might get beat up. But, like, that's just what we did, you know. So when I told him I'm going to church, he was like, well, I remember he was laying in my living room. And he got up, he put on his shoes, and we left. I'm like, well, that was easy, you know, you know. And this is crazy, guys, because I was going here and there, and I remember there was an altar call that day. I still hadn't given my life to Christ. I was just going, you know. I was still sitting in the back, and I told Marcos, well, this is where we sit. And then I remember Pastor said, you know, if you want to give your life to Christ, and then I looked, and Marcos was running to the front. Yeah,
no way.
Yeah, he was in the front.
Wow.
Yeah, and he signed up for Encounter, like, and I hadn't even signed up for Encounter yet, you know, like.
So he went all in.
Yeah, he went all. He's always been that way. Like, you know, whenever he did something, he just goes in all the way. I like to take my time, you know, because I don't know what I'm getting myself into.
I don't think he brought that up, Oscar. He didn't bring that up.
He probably doesn't remember. Yeah. But yeah, he just ran. So Marcos was the first one, you know, like I said, I think it's just trusting who I was, and like I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not. Like, I would tell him something. If it's going to be boring, bro, don't worry, don't come with me. But I just let God do what he had to do. The second one was Manuel. And this is where I tell you where my sneakiness came in. We used to go to the gym a lot, Manuel and I. And I remember one time I'm like, hey, let's go hiking, dude. Like, he's like, hiking? All right, cool, let's go hiking then. And I remember, like, he was going to pick me up that day. And I remember praying, like, God, like, I don't really know how to talk about you, but, like, help me bring you up. You know, like, help me, like, I don't know, help me, like, talk to him about, you know, what you've been doing in my life, or just help me preach to him, you know. And I remember we started hiking, and, like, we were going up. It was, like, a 40-minute hike, you know. And then I was, like, we were talking, you know, and then, like, the time was, we were already coming to the end, and I chickened out, you know. I never told him anything. But then he dropped me off, and then he texted me, like, hey, dude, I noticed something in you. I'm like, yeah, what's that? He goes, you didn't check out any girls on the way to because there was a lot of girls walking in front of us, you know. He's like, yeah, he noticed. He's like, I noticed you haven't checked out any girls today. And I'm like, oh yeah, dude, like, you know, like, God's really been working in my life, you know. And then he goes, cool, like, when do you guys have service? Yeah,
wow,
you know, yeah, just like that, bro. And I remember on Fridays I would get off at 8 p.m. and then I text him the address. You know, this is what time it starts. And then he got there before me because, you know, I was still working. And he texted me. He was outside church. He goes, hey, can we pregame here? There's a band. What? He goes, there's a band in there, bro. Can we pregame? I'm like, no. That's not that kind of band. I'm like, it's not that kind of band, bro. Just wait. I mean, just go in. Don't worry. It's cool, you know. He's like, oh, no, I'll wait for you, you know. But, yeah, so then after that, like, that was a big help for me because, you know, like, I was just available, you know. I was just available, and then God just started working in his life. So that was Manuel, and then Sergio. Sergio, you know, Sergio and I have, you know, he's like my brother too. On Wednesday nights we would go. I'm telling you, I was super lukewarm. We would go to bars, you know, specific bars. They had margarita for $2, you know. So I was broke, so I would go there on Wednesdays. And then Sergio's like, hey, let's go together. It was somewhere in LA. Let's go together. I'm like, hey, no, I'll meet you there. He goes, you've been doing that lately. You've been meeting us there. Like, why can't you? And Sergio's the curious one, you know. He goes, what do you do, bro? Like, what do you do? Like, why do you get there after? I'm like, well, it's because I stopped by somewhere before I go there. He's like, well, I'll go with you then. Like, let's go together. Because he wanted to catch me, like, in a lie or something. Yeah. I'm like, okay, bro. I stop by somewhere. It's kind of like church, you know. But it's not church. Yeah, but it's not church. Yeah. He's like, all right. And it was cell group. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So we went to cell group, and he goes, you know, like, he's like, okay, cool. And I remember, like, we left cell group that day, and that day the message was about, like, repentance, you know. And then Sergio's driving, and it's quiet. We're on the way to the bar, and I just felt uneasy, you know. And I could tell something was up with him too. And I was like, I don't really want to go, dude. And he goes, me neither. And we turned. He turned around. He got off the freeway. We got food, and we went home. Never again did we ever go to a bar, you know.
Wow.
So then Sergio started going to cell group with me. Marcos at that time had already been connected. You know, he was already going to another cell group. But yeah. Funny story. Sergio would call cell group church, and then he would call service church.
Church.
So he was like, hey, are we going to church or church? Like today. I'm like, no, we're going to church.
And how about Louis?
So this is cool. So Louis had a girlfriend. He was with Natalie, you know. So so these guys were single, you know. So it was like we would hang out more. But you know, when you have a girlfriend in the world, you're just with a girlfriend all the time. So I wouldn't see Louis as often. We would like just on the weekends whenever like we would go out and stuff. But I wouldn't see Louis as often. But Sergio worked with him, so I wasn't by myself anymore. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I think you wanted to share something that you know about the friends, right? You were telling me a little bit.
Well, I do. Oh, okay, with the verse. But before I go into that, I did want to ask Oscar a question. Since we're on this topic, it's about Chendo. You know, I'm always curious, like, how'd you win Chendo, or how was that process? Because I knew you guys knew each other from the world, right?
Yeah, let me. Can I borrow the mic, bro? Sorry, bro. We'll get you a mic for you. You can take home a souvenir. Well, Chendo and I grew up. We actually used to go similar to with JC. We used to go and meet each other at clubs or like parties, right? And the crazy thing is that I hadn't seen Chendo in years. Like Chendo's daughter and my daughter are the same age, so Karen, my wife, and Chendo's baby. No, not baby mama. What's another word for his ex? You edit. They used to hang around while Chendo and I used to go and get drunk, And so when I met Chendo again, it was actually at CFF, dude. Sergio Vera was getting baptized, and I just see Chendo passing by, in front of us, and I'm looking at him like, is that Chendo? And he showed up with three other guys watching Sergio Vera get baptized. Oh, wow. And so then we reconnected. I invited him to cell group, and he's been coming to cell group since then, But it's kind of like how it happened with JC, dude. It's funny you bring him up because, I think that there's a lot of people out there who are living, their best life, drinking. They invite people to clubs and bars, But when the topic of inviting them to church, it's hard, it's difficult for you to. I don't know if when you guys were out in the world. For me, it was my friends were always texting me on Fridays like, "Where are we going?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or if I was the organizer that weekend, I'd be like, this is where we're going, and it was like, it was easy for us. But when it came down to making that transition, inviting people for church, like all of a sudden, forget their inviting skills, but I think, I don't know if that answers your question, but when I met JC, it was actually at my encounter when I really met him. Like I have seen him, he was always the guy smiling, pastor's favorite,
Say that again.
Pastor's favorite, disciple, and self-proclaimed pastor's favorite disciple. But he always had a smile on his face, always had people around. His wife always happy, And I remember when I was serving at Encounter, I went to Encounter. He was actually, when I served at Encounter, he was serving at the kitchen. I don't know if you remember.
Oh yeah.
And it took me a while to make friends at church, and so I remember JC was welcoming, super welcoming, like smiling. Hey, Oscar, come here, dude. He noticed that it was taking me a while probably, and he was like, hey, come here, dude. Won't you help me with this? And he always had that about him that he was very welcoming, a very kind heart, and because of that, you wanted to be around him, and I don't know if you could take us back, JC, when you were out in the world. You said that your friends always wanted to be near you,
Yeah.
like you're the example of a man who can make ministry fun, like, make it fun, exciting, And I think most men, we think that if we're gonna go to church, it's almost like, man, we're gonna go enter into a boring life, you know, a life that's like lacking adventure, that's like you're gonna plateau, you know, like at least that's what I thought, because that's the motto I saw growing up at church, you know. So what can you tell us? How did you make like church, like, I know of course you brought all your friends, but made it easier, but like, you know, ministry has been fun to you, you know, at least that's the way we've seen it. So how can you tell a man that, like, you know, thinking like, I don't want to go because it's boring, like how did it become so exciting and a joyful thing for you to do?
Sure. You know, well, first of all, the reason why people wanted to be around me is because I had the connections, you know. I knew where everything was at. I knew where, like, all the parties were at, you know. I had friends from, like, different schools. So there was always something to do, you know what I mean? But, you know, and my wife is my witness, you know. I tell her all the time, like, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing other people give their lives to God, you know. There's nothing more satisfying than to see people be touched by God, you know. Like, sometimes, you know, like, I see videos of people, like, receiving the Holy Spirit, and I start crying. I'm like, wow, like, yes, like, you receive, like, you know what I know, like, it's so awesome, you know. And like, that brings me joy now. That's crazy, you know, like, you know, because going out and drinking and stuff like that, it was fun, don't get me wrong, but it will die, you know. But like, this life that I have now along my wife, you know, to see people's lives literally change, like, it's just crazy how God works, you know. I would have never thought that would be what would make me happy or give me joy, you know what I mean? And as far as making ministry fun, it wasn't always like that, because I don't know, it was new, especially like, you know. And then when I got married to Nuria, like, we're different, we're leaders, you know, we're different, our styles are different, you know. It was until we found our dynamic where it became fun, you know. But yeah, just you know, having that welcoming spirit, you know, and also being never stop being interested in people, you know what I mean? And I think that's what people really why people stick around, you know. There's a saying that people don't know what you they don't care what you say until they know how much you care, you know. And I think when people know that you care about them, you know, they want to be there. And when people want to be there, that's what makes it fun, you know. It's not fun when you're, you know, having soccer when people don't want to be there, you know what I mean?
Awesome, dude. You know, you mentioned that, I don't know if you could take us back to like how it was, like, especially with you thinking or not knowing that if you were going to experience something at Encounter, you know, because I think most of us go to Encounter and, you know, at least how it was with me, I knew there was something that I needed to let out, you know. But you've been through several encounters already, like at that point when you said, like, you got so angry that you were being mistaken by your father, you know, like, to the point now where people actually see and recognize your father in heaven in you. Like, how has that been? Like, how has it been? Like, what can you tell somebody that's like that Encounter conversation is going to come in like in a few weeks and not like shying away from it or like thinking I'm not going to go because there's nothing I could receive, you know?
Yeah.
And you receive something without knowing.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I've been to one encounter like to receive. Every encounter that I've been to ever since have been like to serve, you know, to help out. But honestly, even to those I receive, you know, like, just like I said, seeing people's life transform, like, it's fun, you know, like, really, it really is fun. I'm not even just saying that. But I would say, you know, like, if you have any, excuse me, if you're hesitating to like go to Encounter, like, just know that God's not here to hurt you. You know, like, God doesn't want to hurt you. Like, He has the best plans for you. You know, and when someone understands that, you know, you're not gonna go to just maybe witness a supernatural crazy experience. You know, because people are afraid of that. You know, at least I was. You know, like, you know, if I could be transparent with you, like, whenever, like, you know, obviously I would watch scary movies and stuff, like, you know, like Exorcist and stuff like that, you know. So I knew that the supernatural realm was like real. So I'm like, man, like, I know what I do. So what is God gonna do to me? You know, like, He's gonna shake me out, you know, like out of myself, you know, like No, like that was something I was low key afraid of, or I just did it. I didn't want to get weirded out. That was my concern, but that was the least of it. Like God is a gentleman. Jesus is a gentleman, and He knocked at my heart. And I allowed Him to come in and and He transformed me from the inside out. So for those who, I guess, to answer your question now, if you're hesitating, know that God loves you. That God loves you, and He knows your deepest desires. He knows your deepest fears, right? And He's not afraid of them, and to the contrary, like He wants to remove that from you, and I know change can be scary, but when God changes you, it's the most beautiful thing that can happen. One of the best examples I've heard was people say, like, when I went to Encounter, I didn't realize I was holding so much, and when I left, I felt like it just a backpack full of like rocks fell off, and that would happen to you if you decide to step in faith. Like I said, so many times we're willing to do things that are just temporary. It could be something like a roller coaster. I'm afraid, but I'm gonna do it. Screw it, right. Or like or like talking to someone, like if you want to like hit on someone, like I might get rejected, but hey, I'm gonna try it. Like try it with God, you know what I mean, and see He'll never fail you.
I we were sharing with you like what and is that actually really cool what our church is doing and what the Holy Spirit is taking our church to do to to win the lost, to have compassion for the lost. And like I was sharing with you before we started about you remind me of the scripture in Luke 5 verse 17, and the story about the those friends that took the leopard, the paralytic, to Jesus. It was their faith that led them to even break the ceiling for Him, and like you brought in so many people, to the feet of Jesus, and especially right now with what the church is doing, where our ministry is going, like, of course, it was a process. You didn't just like from one day to the next one to Encounter. There was a process that led you there. And I believe we're going to start a new process at our church that could help open that opportunity for people, and I think what an amazing way to open that with your testimony, a testimony that's brought, like people, your friends, your family, bro, that into church, that now serve our at CFF. Like what would you tell? I mean, I know you share with us a little bit of how you did it, but like what keeps you going from like inviting people, or bringing people to church? Because I know you've shared things with us of what you do in your normal life, but how do you make that a lifestyle?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of want to iterate on what you said about the friends. Once 3 of my friends were here, it was easier. If you bring it back to the story, there was the men that brought the friend to Jesus. So at this point, I wasn't alone anymore. I had Sergio, I had Marcos and Manuel, so it was easier for me to bring Louis along because now it wasn't just me, Right. So it was 3 of us that were able to bring Louis to Jesus, but when it comes to seeking, to winning people, that's what my purpose is, to Jesus said He came to seek and to save those who are lost, and when you hear that, you're like, okay, yeah, like I know we're supposed to like bring the gospel, but He says he came to seek and to save, Right. So my job as a follower of Christ is to seek those who are lost, and one thing that makes it like if you really think about it, like for example, like when God was able to show me that everyone has a need, like no matter who you are, there's a need in your life. Maybe you don't know it, but there is, and I was able to see, like when you allow God to open your eyes, like spiritually, like I was able to see that friend that just wanted to party. Then I was able to see like, okay, no, he doesn't want to be home because his home situation sucks, right? Or that friend that's always high, no, he doesn't want to feel, right? Or that person who's always angry, like, oh man, this guy went through some stuff, you know what I mean? So then, God started to show me that, and these are people who I know, right? But like people that you don't know, they also go through things, and I think when you realize that every single person has a need, and the need for Jesus, like it's I guess it's a push, like to be able to step out and be able to share Jesus with them. You know what I mean?
And that story is perfect because those three friends didn't give up on that paralytic friend. They knew that Jesus was at that house preaching, and those three friends did whatever they could. They went to the top of the roof and opened that roof up so they could drop the paralytic, because we all know somebody who's paralyzed. I'm not talking about physically, but spiritually.
Yeah.
They don't know who they are as a person. They're lost, and they're trying to find somebody to help them. And before I go on, I do want to give advice to those that feel like they're being smothered by someone who cares. Because I have people that I'm working on, and one of them's told me, like, hey, you're smothering me. Like, I apologize, but at the end of the day, it's because I care. I wish I had that for me. Like, and I give a quick shout out to Claudio because he never gave up on me. And at that time I thought he was smothering me. Because we were always working out together. And I just remember seeing Claudio, Paola, Helen, Victoria was there, Valerie, and I was still out in the world. And I just remember when they were all together in there, I felt like, okay, hey, I'm going to turn my metal, dark, demonic music up and just block out that they're there. I was trying to get them upset because I was still out in the world. But I just saw the beautiful light in them, but I was still out in the world. But I just remember Claudio always asking me, hey, when are you going to come to church? I'm like, for what? Like, I don't need God. Like, I'm good. And I think what did it for me is when I stopped proclaiming self-love and I accepted God's love. Wow. A lot of people feel like, oh, it's self-love, I want to take care of me. But at the end of the day, you don't have self-love without God's love. And I think once I broke that barrier and I allowed God to fill me up with His goodness and His love, things changed for me. I think that was beautiful.
No, I wanted to ask you. That's what I wanted to ask you that too, because I don't know if you, like, when you were out there, like, and Claudio was on you, like Paola, like, did you ever, when you read a story like this, and I know you were not paralytic, right? But like, what does that do to you? Did you ever feel like they were bringing you and broke the roof, so you could come and meet Jesus? Or I don't know if you could take us to that, like, because you see JC and you see the fruit of how much love and compassion he had for his friends, and you felt that compassion, right?
It's funny because Claudio knows this, but I remember when he brought Paola. I remember now, Damaris, she came with Paola one time to the gym, right? And Claudio was like, oh, hey, this is Paola. I'm going to church with them. I'm like, yeah, right. You going to church because of them or because you're going for you, And at first I thought Claudio was just going for Paola. He wasn't going for Christ. But then I started to notice Claudio little by little changing. And I noticed, because we've known each other for like 6 years, I knew who he was, and I saw how Jesus was transforming his heart. And there was a point, I think I was at the gym when I had told him that I had relapsed. This was the third time I had relapsed, and I told him, and he gave me a hug. And he's like, just come to Christ. And I remember telling him, I'm like, no, because I'm good. Like, I'll be fine, bro. Like, I don't need Christ. Like, I'll figure it out on my own. And I told him that. And I tried everything, I tried to go to like AA meetings. There was one time I went to a therapist because I was like, I'm going to try therapy for once. And I remember just being at therapy and I just told the doctor, I'm like, no disrespect, but you don't know me. How can you help me? Mm-hmm. And the doctor felt really like offended and he told me to get out. And I'm like, okay, fine. And then I know I just had a personal conversation with Claudio, but I didn't have my heart open. And I just remember every day that I saw him and Paola together, they would always invite me. And I think him, by inviting me, just opened the roof up, but I didn't want to jump into the hole, because I was like, oh, I'll try to figure it out on my own. And it wasn't until God literally came into my ear and told me, hey, come home, it's fine. But I just being around them, as a worldly person, because I can still remember when I saw them together, it was so different. It was like a wall, like a light, and I always remember, I'm like, maybe one day I want to be part of that. I want to see what that feels like. But I just remember, like, Claudio never gave up on me. He opened that roof for me. But, I think that happens to a lot of us that try to win people. We try to open that roof, but they don't want to take that dive in, and that was me. But
and what led you, to, like, go through that roof? I don't know, maybe JC later could tell us, like, how you said they never gave up on you. And I seen JC, he's a very persistent guy, man. Like, right. This guy doesn't give up, but like, how rewarding is it for you? And then how did it feel for you that people, you could still call on Claudio, dude, and when you needed him and he was there, he didn't like forward your call or like didn't text you back,
And you know, I've always had friends. You know, we all had friends growing up, but Claudio was my brother
Yeah.
because he didn't judge me for who I was. Yeah, I have friends now that I used to hang out with that I'm like, oh, you're just going through a phase. You're just going through a thing. And they still think I'm going through a phase. I'm like, bro, I've been coming to church for 9 months strong, and I'm like trying to win them. but because he showed me love as a brother first. He didn't judge me for like relapse. I remember when I told him I had relapse and I was drinking and using again. He's like, "It's okay. We're gonna get through this together," you know. And I like I appreciate that, and that really like wow, like he really cares about me. Because I remember trying to go to somebody else. I'm like, "Hey, I relapsed. Oh wow, hey, well let's take a shot together. You'll be all right." And I'm like, so I was able to identify the difference. Like Jesus worked in Claudio, and he planted the seed because I remember one day I was still out in the world and Claudio was talking to me. I remember thinking, I'm like, wow, like I want to feel what Claudio feels and what God's done, but I was just still so blinded by the enemy. You know, the enemy had a hold on me, but like, you know, I've said in other podcasts, if I gave the world and the enemy my everything when I was still out there, I had to give God everything because, you know, he saved me, you know. But what was your question for him?
Forgot.
No.
No, ask him what.
And you know I do want to jump into, but because we're trying to win the loss, you know, how can we reach out the loss? Because from my from my point of view, because obviously, like I've talked to you, like I want to reach people who are hard to get, because if I feel I could get those, they have such great testimonies, you know, like the lost have great testimonies. How can you tell somebody, or because I'm trying to find out for myself too, because the guys I'm trying to win over, it's hard. You know, like it's like one day they're cool, like 1 week they're good, and the other week they're like, hey, leave me alone. Because I remember when I was trying to get wind, I was like, leave me alone, like stop, like I'm good, like stop, like bother. Why you bothering me? How can you reach somebody like that, or like what's the advice you could give?
Yeah. So for example, like I know that you guys, you know, talk about my friends that are here, but there's still friends out there who are not here. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that God's not working them still. Right. You know what I mean? It's in due season. You know, like due season, like He's gonna work. You know, if we're planting seeds. You know what I mean? And sometimes, like, how does that look? Like, if I could be practical with you guys, because you already told him, like, he knows what you're about, right? Like, you could preach to them all you want, right? But it's the things that matter to them. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like I try to make it to their kids' birthdays. You know, like I try to, like, sometimes, you know, like I might not want to. You know what I mean? Or sometimes, like, oh look, it's my mom's birthday. You know, like, and you haven't seen your friend in a while, but like you've been praying for them. You know, so just showing up. You know, showing up. And people remember, you know, people remember that, you know. And the cool thing is, going back to what I said, they don't care what you know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, you know. Exactly. And I think it's like, you know, I had a friend who, you know, I love so much too, but he's not here, and I invite him, and then even times where like, hey bro, come play basketball on Mondays. He goes, well, not if your church homies are going, you know what I mean? So like, it's not like everyone's here, you know. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, no worries, dude, you know, like it's gonna be fun, but then like, you know, he hears about earthquakes, so hey bro, what does the Bible say about earthquakes? You know what I mean? Like, like God is working, bro. You know what I mean? And you have to trust the process. You know, everyone has a different process, you know. But at the end of the day, like, if you are responding to the call, like, you have to leave everything else in God's hands, you know. There's a verse that I want to share with you guys. I'm actually doing a devotional for new believers right now, because you know, there's two guys in my cell group, and Nurias and I cell group, that are, you know, they're new to Christ, and I guess I'll go off topic a little bit. Like, one thing is never stop being a student. You know what I mean? Like, not just of the word, but like always be willing to learn. You know, because sometimes, like, you know, I've been here 10 years, right? I don't know anything, you know what I mean? Like, God still, like, surprises me every single time, you know? The moment that you think you know everything, like, that's when we stop receiving, you know what I mean? And even from God, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I've read Romans 100 times. Like, I probably know what it's going to say, you know what I mean? Right. But when we are open and humble, like, Holy Spirit still speaks, you know what I mean? But what I was going to say is, the Apostle Paul says, when I am with those who are weak, I share their weakness, for I want to bring the weak to Christ. Yes, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save them. Wow. You know, so it's fine. Like, it's the Bible also talks about with the Jews I'm a Jew and with the Gentile I'm a Gentile. I'm not saying I'm gonna go and party with them. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like removing myself from that, place of like leadership, and really sitting down with someone and be like, hey, dude, like, like Jesus did it. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I love my Jesus, because he didn't treat his disciple. Obviously, he was closer to his disciples, but he loved on the sick. He would call them daughters. He would go eat at their house. You know what I mean? And sometimes we lose that. And I think that how can we lose that when Jesus did it? So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
And I do want to get to the parable of the lost sheep, because there's a lot of people. I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a lot of people that don't want to come because they feel judged. They feel like they're too broken, or they're too much of a mess. That why would God accept them? Because I've heard that, like, why would Jesus want somebody like me? Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that Jesus doesn't call the qualified, right? Peter was a fisherman, Matthew was a tax collector. He even hired an assassin, Simon the Zealot. He was hired to kill. But in the parable of the lost sheep, I want to get it. You guys can help me out with the parable, because But tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he wasn't associated with such sinful people, even eating with them. So Jesus told them this story: if a man has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go to search for the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. When he arrives, he will call together his friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep." In the same way, there's more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away.
Yeah.
So my question would be, it could be you or Oscar, but as you guys are how can you explain that story to somebody who feels like they're going to be judged?
Well, I believe it was Karen last week, quote my wife, that said that sometimes we have the misperception that we have to be a finished product, and like JC, I think's story, like, it illustrates a completely different process than what people normally think. Like, I used to think people needed to be broken, dude, like, in order for them to come to church. I used to think come to church and be like, well, I like, all these people are like, they got it, they got it together. But the fact is that we don't, and the enemy lies to us. Like, the enemy lied to me and told me for a long time that I didn't have a testimony. Like, what are you gonna go and testify to if you're good? Like, and for the longest time, like, I remember I went to Encounter and I was like, for what? Like I'm good, Like, I used to think like JC, but then, like, man, like that was a strategy from the enemy to make us think, hey, dude, you don't need Jesus. There's people that, of course, that done like people that come to our in another cell group, but our church, any other church, that have done things that they may think are like not, like that Jesus will turn away. But once you understand that Jesus is looking for you, and that you come to a church that puts a lot of value in the lost, rather than the ones that are saved, because the ones that are saved are saved. They know where to go. They know where their pastors is. They know where the church is. But like JC said, like, man, we get so much joy from seeing one person go into the altar, raise their hands. Like, I remember when one of my first disciples, when they were raising up their hands, and I would like open up my eye a little bit and be like, oh, they raised their hands. Like, that's such a joy, because that's what Jesus like is telling us here. Like, there's so much joy when there's a person who repents than one who doesn't believe. Yeah. You can have a person come to church every single Sunday, going to cell group, that never picks up their hands. Their hands are too heavy. But one that like comes to church like Marcos and runs to the front, like, man, what a joy in heaven that is. And for those of us that have experienced inviting someone come in and do that, man, it's addicting. Like you wanna see that all the time, and having people sign up for Encounter is like, yes, we get an opportunity to see God move. And JC, I don't know if you could speak a little to that, JC, but man, it's such a joy when we see people raising their hands, because that means they surrendered.
That's what I was going to say. Like, we challenge. I mean, if whoever's listening to this, I challenge you, and if you don't know what that feels like, invite someone you care about, and let's let God do something in their lives, and you're gonna see how satisfying that feels, because that's what you were meant to do. You know what I mean? Like that's what we're here for. Like to be tools of God. To see people see their lives transformed, right? To receive redemption. There's so much redemption in people. Like that one lost sheep, right? And like, and that's. I think that's it's not a coincidence that it's in the Bible, right? That one lost sheep, because the enemy goes up, like he goes after that one person who secludes themselves from others, right? Right? Who thinks that they're lonely, right? Like they're the only ones, and then attacking the mind, attacking, the heart, you know what I mean? But that's why Jesus wants to bring you into a community, right, of people, like. And that's my advice, to people too, to like get close to people, like men get close to other men. Like, we're so prideful sometimes, man. Like, but you'll be surprised when you open up, when you share, what's really in your heart, how many other people go through the same thing. You know what I mean? We're like, wow, like I'm not the only one, But yeah.
And I know for you also, like your heart has always been to win the lost, like I think ever since you came, you started posting videos on IG, bro. Like you were like all about winning the lost, and like I don't know if you felt the joy of being that lost sheep that now found his way, to the shepherd,
Right.
Or the shepherd found him. Like what can you tell us about, like, why is it so like such a drive for you to post every day, to do these podcasts, like it's not for us to get famous, because we know that's not what the purpose is, even though we do, you know what I mean? but but that's not our drive, our drive is for the lost, our drive is for those people who are addicted, those people who don't have a purpose, those people who thought they're too shy and meek, like me, like I'm shy. What is God gonna use a shy person for, But like we know, like JC said, like God changed our purpose. So what's driving you? Your purpose was different, but now in the hands of God, it's so mightily, Like why do you push, dude? Why do you want to win so many people?
So thinking of who I am now, I wish I could have been a better friend, but most importantly, I wish I could have been a better son and a better brother when I was younger, because of who I used to be. Why I do it now, it's because I do want to share this testimony why it also drives me. It didn't, I haven't brought this up. George knows. Hell, most of the people in the side group know, but there was a time where I got admitted to the hospital because my pancreas almost bursted, because I was like, I had relapsed. I was drinking like 3 bottles a day, And I got to the point where my pancreas was closing. I was having kidney failure, and I checked into the hospital October 14th at nighttime. In the morning, my friend Isaac messaged me. I'm like, hey, also, like, how you doing? Like, hey, can I talk to you? I need to talk to you. But I was in pain the whole day, so I'm like, hey, bro, I'm not feeling good. Like, can we meet some other time? And he never responded to me. And the second night at the hospital, I found out through IG, my friend Isaac had committed suicide. And that still hurts me, to this day, because I'm like, he was trying to reach out to me, he was trying to, because we were lifting partners. I was lifting with him every day. And that always sticks to me, because I do this for the glory of God and what God's done in my life. But there's people out there who, like, we might be winning and might not want to talk to us. So my vision and my goals, what I want to do is like, okay, if you're not going to message me, I want to make sure you hear me one way or another. So that's why I post, because if you're not going to respond to my text message, I want you to know through my videos and through my podcast that I'm talking to you still, and I still care about you. And, it's to counter the enemy, because, there's a lot of people that go to social media for the wrong reasons. And I want to use social media for God's purpose, for God's vision, because whatever the enemy doesn't destroy, he'll distract you from. And I want to read from 1 Peter 5 verse 8. Stay alert, watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Stand firm against him and be strong in your faith. Because the enemy's always out there trying to fight you. He's trying to bite you, but we got to be like Jesus, step on the serpent's head, when he got tempted. But also I think it made it easier for me when I knew how loving our God was. Because, the Great Commission, Jesus knew that Peter was going to deny him 3 times, and his disciples fell asleep on him at the Garden of Gethsemane right before he got arrested. But it could go back way, when the Israelites were in Egypt still. God could have wiped out the Pharaoh and the Israelites, but God allowed it to happen because he had a greater purpose. Whatever was happening to Jesus when he got arrested, God could have wiped them out for doing what they did to Jesus. Jesus could have rejected Peter and the disciples for abandoning him. And then I see, wow, despite everything that's happened in the history of, of Jesus, the Bible, God forgave us. God forgave everybody. And that, to me, I'm like, who am I to hit somebody or judge somebody for being wrong? I'm like, I need to forgive them, because at the end of the day, we don't know. There's somebody out there that no one's ever told sorry them. They've never apologized to them before. Yeah. So I got to show what God's done in my life and who he is through me. Awesome. So that's what drives me every day.
Awesome. And the last question I have for JC, and then, you could drive it home also. I didn't know that you share with us that, you grew up without a father, and you something that really spoke to me about what you were saying, that is that, you used to get mad when people compare you to your father, because you didn't know him, but now you know your father in heaven, and I could tell you, I'm so honored to be walking with you, because now we can tell who your father is. You smell like Jesus, you have the heart like Jesus, and we know who your father is, And I think that's why people want to get near you, because that's why your wife loves you very much. I mean, you're a good-looking man, but she loves Jesus. And what an awesome testimony you have. That what does it feel? I mean, how do you carry on, and what are you looking for in ministry? God has done so much in your life, but I know he has many more things in store for you, right? How crazy it is that now Father, and now you're just like him. You have his heart. What can you tell somebody like us that maybe our Father on earth was not the same representation of what our Father in heaven is, but we got a chance to know him, and he's calling us to be just like him, to have compassion for the lost like he did with us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Bible does say, if your mother and father forsake you, I will never forsake you, and I think that's the difference between not just from our earthly parents, right, but and God, but a lot of us, we tend to, at least for me, I tend to see God the way my parents would treat me, you know what I mean? Like when you get in trouble, you get spanked, if you do something, you get in trouble and stuff, and because I know my sin, right? That's what kept me my relationship distant from God, because I felt like, you know what I do, so if I come to you, like I can't, you know what I mean? Like I've always known God was holy, so, and that's why people don't want to go to church, because they don't want to change their ways, right? Because they want to live that lifestyle, and they know that if they become children of God, they have to change their ways, you know what I mean? But anyway, that was a free one. No, but I say this often. I saw a quote one time, and I love to repeat it because it's so true. It said, religion says I messed up, my dad's gonna kill me, but relationship says I messed up, I need to call my dad. And when you understand that the Lord wants to be in your mess, he's not afraid of our mess, right? Like we think he is, like, no, God, I don't want to let you in this because it's too much for you. Like God can handle it, you know what I mean? Not only can he handle it, he can remove it. Amen. And pick you up, and it sounds silly, but like I sometimes I feel like his little boy, you know what I mean? Like he cleans my crap, right? And I'm on my way again, you know what I mean? And I could always rely on him, like I didn't always feel like I can rely on someone like I could in God. Of course, I rely on my wife, and I don't, you know, what I mean, like she's there for me, you know, but I always rely on God. You know what I mean? And there's people that don't know who they can rely on because they've been betrayed, they've been hurt, you know, by others. But that's not who God is. You know what I mean? And God is our perfect Father, our good Father. You know, and I know it's weird for people to see themselves as a son or as a daughter of God. I know. Like it was hard for me too. But when I accepted Him, like I literally felt like God picking me up. You know, like I got you. I have you now. You know, like I have your back. You know. So yeah, man, that's been the big difference maker for me. Like I know who my father is. I know someone's, you know, like people say God's, you know, he's looking after me. Like I really know He is really looking after me. You know what I mean? Not just looking at me, but looking after me. You know. And real quick, I know that you know that that was your question, but I kind of wanted to piggyback on what you said. You know about you know, like I'm sorry about your friend, by the way. You know, like. Because that happened, that also gave you that motivation to be out there and preach. You know, I tell this to my disciples all the time. Whenever they're struggling with whatever they're struggling with, it could be like lack of drive or even like, you know, purity, whatever. Like whatever they're struggling with, like the answer is always being used by God. Why? Because if you take, like, I know also, like, if you're over here like making videos to try to win the people, like you're not gonna have time to struggle with certain things. Your mind is too occupied serving God. You know what I mean? But when we're not serving, like, then yeah, we're that lost sheep. You know what I mean? That where the enemy can easily come and attack you. You know what I mean? Wow. But when you're being useful, right? When you're being useful, when you're out there trying to, like, you know, just love on somebody, right? Or like, man, God, like, how can you use me today? You know what I mean? Like, there's no room for those struggles, right? Or for you to be just all about yourself, you know? Like, I've never been so content than serving others, because, like, you know, when you're there for others, God has you. You know what I mean?
And that's beautiful. And JC, I actually want to ask you. I want to ask one last question before I bring it home.
This episode is brought to you by
Yerba
Mate. Yeah, you know, we're gonna get hooked up. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh man, sorry, no. But you know, I do want to drive this home. You know, because I know you guys are leaders of the church. You know, hopefully one day, you know, I get there. You know, but and you know, there's men of this church that we're not just regular men of the world. You know, we're men of CFF, you know, and that itself is strong enough, because we have a strong pastor, Pastor Pablo, his wife, powerful Pastor George, but also powerful leaders like you guys, you know, and I know the other leaders, you guys are powerful, and for you guys to lead us, we already have a standard, because we're being led by you guys who are the fruit of pastor. So that only means that we're fruit from you guys, from pastor. So my question would be is, how can us men of the church step it up? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's so many ways, right? But, you know, no matter, even leaders need, we have to sometimes, you know, like, come down our high horse. You know, like, just because you're a leader doesn't mean that you stop winning, right? Wow. Like, if anything, like, we're the example. You know what I mean? Like, we are. A leader doesn't give orders only, you know, like a leader brings people with them, you know what I mean? And I think if you invite people in your life, you know, that's why Pastor Pablo's, you know, like, that's why people love Pastor Pablo so much. Yeah, he's an amazing preacher, but he invites us into his life, you know? Like, I admire him more in his kitchen than, I don't want to say that. I admire him always, you know, that's my pastor. I love him. But I admire so much how he treats his kids, his wife, more than just with the mic. Right. You know what I mean? And I think that if we live that lifestyle of, you know, really, you know, showing the God with our life, you know, man, it sometimes it really is. It speaks more louder than words. You know what I mean? And I think that, you know, men want to be leaders. Men want to be the captain. Men want to do all these things, but a lot of times we don't want to take on the responsibility. You know, and I think if we take on the responsibility, you know. Like, as cheesy as it sounds, we can really change the world, man. Like, I really believe that. Like, if you look at statistics, you know, men in prison grew up without a father, all right? Or they grew up with a dad, but that wasn't there, or abusive father, you know? But if men stepped up and became men of God and allowed God to work in their lives, like, families would change, homes would change, I like to share quotes, bro, but there's a quote that said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family.
Wow.
You know what I mean? If my home, we change, then things around us are going to change, So to answer your question, that's how you can step it up, by taking on the challenge, the calling of God over your life.
Amen. And that's, Oscar, I do want to honor you before, I take it home. Like, I still remember, I'm always going to remember, I don't know if you remember the conversation we had, is if you want to be a good leader, be a better servant, be a better disciple. And, I still remember to this day when you told me that. And that's what I strive to be every day. I'd rather be a great servant and a disciple than a leader. Because at the end of the day, Jesus did serve his disciples, when he washed their feet, right? Yeah. And, but thank you for, you guys, just thank you for you guys being amazing men of the church, amazing leaders. And, we look up to you guys, and just thank you for raising the bar of what a real man should be. Because I see how you guys are with your wives, your kids, your disciples, and that's very, there's hope. It brings me hope. It brings other men hope. And just thank you for accepting that call and running away with it, You want to say anything else or just wrap it up? Oh, there you go.
No, shout out to you also, because not a lot of people are willing to take time out of the day to do this. You know what I mean? So many people just want to receive, especially, I'm new. I've only been here. You've been here, what, 9 months? 9 months. And you've been doing things that other people haven't done in 10 years. You know what I mean? So continue to let God use you, bro. And you are a leader, you know what I mean? Might not have a title, but that doesn't mean you're not a leader, you know what I mean? So just want to thank you for inviting me, guys. It was a pleasure. This was cool. Time flew. When I look at your videos, I'm like, get loud, 2 hours. But I don't know how long we went, but I could see why, Right. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, and you are a leader also. I mean, a leader doesn't need a title, Right. A leader is just who you are, And before I ever was a leader in title, it was always the character, that, and people see that, bro. So like JC said, you've done things that, change the game, dude, and that's what we do. That's how you step up, by letting your actions speak louder than your words. And I love that JC was here today, because this is a man who his actions speak so much louder than anything he's ever said. His testimony, and we have the same calling, to do the
Amen.
same as this man did, And so you want to step up, be like JC.
Amen. And with that being said, and we're going to bring it home, I do want to leave you guys with this verse, chapter Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. And I just want to leave you guys with that, because there's a lot of you, whoever's watching this, if you guys feel lost, or you don't know who you are, and you feel like you're going down a treacherous path, God's there with you. Allow him to guide you. He's reaching out for you. Allow him to bring you home. God's not going to hurt you. He's going to have plans for you to prosper and to, go on to have a future. But with that being said, JC has his cell groups on Thursday,
Thursday, 7:30, La Puente. Oh, yeah. Cell group, we got cell group on Thursday at 7:30 in La Puente. If you know anyone around that area, send them over.
And Oscar on Wednesdays, who can't make Thursdays? Wednesdays
on Pico Rivera, PR.
And then I got cell group Thursdays too. My spiritual father, George. Shout out to George. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Love you guys.